Hi YouTube. It's been a long time since I made my last video. If you hear any noises in the background, it's because I'm staying in a hotel tonight for work. So ignore any of the background noises you hear, I'm sorry. I thought I was done making narcissism videos, but narcissists and toxic people are never done. They work 24/7 on the drama. Drama is not just a hobby for them, it's a career. They always have some drama in reserve or brewing on the back burner. And if you've been the victim of a narcissist, sometimes when you go no contact or try to be gray rock, you still live rent-free in their heads. Apparently, I'm living rent-free in my toxic sister-in-law's head. This video is about the latest drama from my toxic sister-in-law. I've made a series of videos called Toxic Sister-in-Law. This will be the 6th video in the series. In the videos, I talked about my narcissistic and possibly borderline personality disordered sister-in-law, Christina. I used to live next to my parents after a nasty divorce and while I was going to nursing school and a single mom. My brother had lived with my parents all his life, and when he got married in his mid-40s, he moved his new wife into my parents' house upstairs along with their 3 dogs and eventually their adopted baby. They claimed at the time that they could not afford to move anywhere else, so they continued to live upstairs and eat my parents' food, and eventually forced my elderly mother to babysit a toddler. My sister-in-law was very toxic with me from the start, with running a smear campaign to try and make me the family scapegoat. I know now that she was jealous that the kids and I lived in a house, and she was forced to live upstairs in my brother's bedroom. She was kind of a gold digger from the beginning, and I think she was unhappy with the living situation she found herself in, having to live with her in-laws instead of her own house. I didn't realize this was her goal, to force me out of the house the kids and I were living in until we moved. I was living in my grandmother's farmhouse that was next to my parents' house, but once I had enough money to move away, I left. The drama with her ramped up until finally she sent me a 2,012-word text message one morning. I mean, literally, it was 2,000 words. I did a video on it, and I'll try to include a link to the video in the description below. The message was very threatening, and she even challenged me to a fist fight, wanting me to come out to my mother's house and fight her. I felt she was dangerous and unstable. The message was very nasty, with her even going after my kids in the message. After that, I felt trapped in my own house. I couldn't even go outside if I knew she was going to be outside walking her dogs. I tried to avoid her at all costs. I was even worried at one point she would fly off the handle and set the house on fire with me and the kids in it. I've been married to a borderline for 16 years, so I knew when they fly off the handle, they can really cause some damage. My ex put a loaded shotgun in his mouth after an argument and then threatened me. So I don't play around with borderlines when they're being dramatic. Once she sent me that text message, I started looking for a new house to move to and to get me and the kids out of that environment. I'm not going to go into the details of the text message because it would make this video extremely long. I've done several videos on that message and all the drama leading up to things. Anyways, I spent $60,000 of my retirement money on a down payment for a house so I could move away from this woman. I blocked this woman on social media and my phone and email so she would not be able to contact me. When dealing with narcissists, the best method is always no contact. If you can't do no contact, then at least be gray rock. Basically, you ignore them and be as boring as a gray rock. You don't argue with them or give them attention because they want the drama. It's narcissistic supply for them. Anytime this woman sent me a message, I would never respond. I finally blocked her, and I think that pissed her off the most, that she couldn't contact me any longer. So the latest drama involves her finding a way to get a message to me. She did this by involving my fiance. Yes, I'm engaged now. Now, I have not told my fiance a lot about my family, and we don't spend time with my family. I don't go to Christmases or Thanksgiving or birthdays because I don't want to be around my toxic sister-in-law. She listens to every word I say when I'm around and then twists it or takes offense. I have to walk on eggshells around this woman in my own family home, so I choose not to subject myself to that. I was really worried that she was going to find a way to have me arrested because at one point she accused me of assaulting her, and I had to correct her and say, I never laid a hand on you. And she said, well, you assaulted me with your words. That's how she talks. Now, my parents are in their 80s, and I kept thinking that I really don't have a lot of holidays with them anymore. I felt like this woman was keeping me from my family, so this past year I've made an effort to visit my parents when I know she isn't going to be around. I don't want to have any regrets once they're gone. This past Mother's Day, well, the Saturday before Mother's Day, I took my fiancé to my parents' house to give my mother a Mother's Day gift, and also so that my fiancé can see where I grew up. I've never taken my fiancé to see where I grew up, and we don't spend time with my family, so this was a first. While we were at my mother's house, my fiancé asked if they could see my chickens. I used to raise chickens. I had like 15 chickens. And my mother and I actually built the chicken coop and the chicken run. When I moved, my parents said they would take care of the chickens. Now, the chicken coop and the chicken run are in what used to be my backyard. I lived in my grandmother's farmhouse after the divorce, which is right next to my parents' house. I couldn't take the chickens with me because the new neighborhood didn't allow chickens. I moved from the country to the city. The day we moved out, my brother and sister-in-law came into the house and started taking measurements and moving my stuff around. I asked my mother for a few days to move all my things out of the house, but instead they went into the house multiple times, even tearing down the blinds and throwing my things in a pile on the floor like they were trash. It looked like the place had been robbed. The moving van didn't hold everything, and I had to go back several times to pack up things, including all my artwork. If you followed me for any length of time, you know that I'm an artist in my free time, and I had over 30 paintings in that house, and I didn't want anything to happen to them before I could move them. And now I have my brother and his wife coming into the house and throwing our remaining stuff into a pile like it was junk. When I said this was an invasion of privacy, my mother had responded that they needed time to get the house ready for Daniel and Christina to move in with the baby. They were trying to adopt at that point, and I guess the social worker told them they had a lot of work to bring the house up to code. They even found my security cameras and cut them off while they were in my house moving my stuff around. I didn't have a lot of time off of work when we moved, so I was going out to the house during my time off to move the rest of my things, but it wasn't fast enough for my brother and Christina. Anyways, it was a mad rush for me and the kids to move out of the house. And because Christina wanted to move in so badly, she was putting a lot of pressure on my brother and my mom. I really did not know that she had her eye on that house, and now that we were moving, she was wanting us to leave as soon as possible and going through my things. It was an invasion of privacy, but I don't know what the rush was because they spent the next 2 years tearing down walls and ripping up floors and remodeling the entire house. They acted like they were going to move in immediately after we left, but they didn't move in until recently. They didn't move in until January of this year. That's 2 full years after we moved. So you think they could have given us at least a couple weeks to move all my stuff. So Daniel and Christina have been living in the house I lived in that doesn't belong to them. It's my mother's house, rent-free. I think my dad even pays the light bill for the house. So when my fiancé asked if we could go see the chickens, I said I wasn't sure, but my mother said that Daniel and Christina were gone to see Christina's sister, and it was okay. My parents regularly collect the eggs and feed and water the chickens. Daniel and Christina have nothing to do with the chickens that are essentially still mine. My parents have adopted them. My mom also has a new puppy that was very rambunctious, so we put the puppy on a leash, and I said, okay, well, we'll walk the puppy and go collect the eggs. My mother went with us and was showing my fiancé all the chicken coop and chicken run that we built together. My fiancé was asking me about all the different breeds of chickens, and I pointed out which ones lay brown eggs and which ones lay white eggs. Don't get me started on chickens. I can go down a whole rabbit hole about chickens. The dog kept pulling on the leash, so we went around the side of the house and back towards my mother's house. As soon as we rounded the corner, I noticed that all my rose bushes were gone. I had planted 4 huge double knockout rose bushes. Now, these bushes die off in the winter, but they come back in the spring, so they'll look dead in the wintertime. Also, all of the azaleas that my grandparents had planted were gone too. This one azalea bush had to be 5 foot across, and it would bloom these hot pink flowers every spring. It was amazing. There were a dozen azalea bushes, all gone. I don't know how they got rid of the azalea bush because it was so large. Another bush I had planted that was this gorgeous purple flower bush, I can't even remember the name of it now, it was gone too. Even the hydrangea bush that my brother planted for me on my first Mother's Day after I was divorced was gone as well. We walked around the front of the house on the way back to my mother's house and noticed the pavers were gone. I had installed these huge 2 foot by 2 foot pavers to create a sidewalk because the yard would get so muddy when it rained. I had put gravel down on the driveway, and they had let weeds grow in between the rocks to where the driveway was disappearing. When you have a gravel driveway, you have to keep the weeds sprayed, or the grass and weeds will grow over the gravel and soon it'll just be a field again with no driveway. So I told my fiance about all the flowers I'd planted and the improvements I'd done to the house that were gone now. I noticed they had a Ring camera, like I have one on my house, so they would know that we had been there. But we were with my mother, so I figured it was okay. After all, it's my mother's house and her land. She just lets them live there rent-free. I went home and I was a little sad that my rose bushes were gone and my grandparents' azaleas were gone too. It was a lot of work, and now the house looked almost abandoned, even though people were living there. There was trash all in the front yard, and I guess because they aren't paying to live there, they don't see the need to make improvements or keep the yard looking nice. Anyways, like I said, I was a little sad, but then I got over it. We took my mother to lunch, and I gave her a Mother's Day gift, and I had a good visit with my parents. My fiancé went home that night, and that was the last I had thought about it. My fiancé lives an hour away, so we try to spend as much time as possible with each other on the weekends. So here's where the drama comes into play. I was sleeping through the day on Mother's Day because I had to work the night shift. I'm a night shift nurse. My fiancé doesn't text me in the middle of the day unless it's important or an emergency because they know I need to sleep. They texted me that Christina had sent them a Facebook message. There aren't even friends on Facebook, and Christina is blocked on my Facebook, so the only way she could figure out who my fiancé is would be that she got her information from my brother or my mother. My fiancé said they received a 6-paragraph message from Christina. I told my fiancé just to block her and ignore her. I asked that they forward the message to me, though, so I could see it and have it for future reference if I need it. So I'm going to read it in her voice. I like to do comedy, and I've always done voices. When we first moved after the divorce, my kids were sad, so I started doing a Russian accent for our cat, Jasper. He's a Russian blue, and so I would pretend that he was talking to the kids, and I would pretend he was speaking in a Russian accent. It would make my kids laugh. Like, I am Jasper the kitty, and I'm a Russian blue from Siberia. I'm not fat, just pleasantly plump. And, that would always cheer my kids up. It would make them laugh, when they were sad about the divorce. So I'm going to read it in Christina's voice. So this is the message she sent to my fiancé, since she can't send me messages directly.
This is Christina. I need to be honest. I was really shocked to see that you and Julia were walking around our home while we weren't there. Seriously. At what point did you think that was okay? We felt incredibly disrespectful, inconsiderate, and like a total overstep of boundaries. Also, I want you to take a moment and really think, how would you feel if someone was walking around your home looking at your space, making assumptions about your life and stepping into areas they had no business being in? That's exactly how it felt to us. I know that we don't know each other, but I'm married to Julia's brother Daniel, and I'm sure you've already formed opinions based on things you've heard from Julia. I'd be willing to bet you haven't heard the whole truth, because let's be real. She rarely tells the full story on anything. She doesn't mention how she crosses lines, gets involved in things that aren't her business, and forms judgments without having all the facts. Julia is a very judgmental person, regardless of what the truth may actually be. She's quick to criticize and rarely stops to consider the bigger picture on anything. It's frustrating, and it creates tension that shouldn't even exist in this family. Yes, the yard may not look perfect right now, but keeping food on our table, gas in our car, and making financial progress for our family has been our top priority, certainly not planting flowers or tidying up for appearances at the present time. While it is our plan down the road, priorities is something that Julia knows nothing about. And honestly, if Julia was so concerned about the flowers that she planted when she lived there, then she should have taken them with her when she left. She don't live there anymore, and I'm also guessing she didn't tell you what the inside of the house looked like when we took it over, because it looks nothing like it did. It's definitely a lot cleaner and smells a whole lot better, and honestly, if she had, you'd know we've worked hard to make this a livable, welcoming space for our family, and no, we are not done. Also, I'll just be real. When Julia lived there, the inside and outside was a hot mess. I'm asking you to respect our space and our privacy moving forward. If we are not home, then you are not welcome there. We're doing the best we can with what we have, and that deserves respect, not judgment. Again, if we are not home, you or Julia do not need to be walking around our home anytime looking at things or involving yourself in anything here. That's not appropriate and it's not your place. We are setting this boundary clearly and respectfully, and we expect it to be honored. Daniel and Christina.
Now, there's so much to dissect in this message, I'm not sure where to start. First of all, we went to see the chickens, and it's my mother's land and my mother's house, and those are my chickens that she takes care of. That's my chicken coop and my chicken run. My mother has made that perfectly clear that they are still my chickens, and that is her house and her land. I had to abandon my chickens because of this woman, and she chose to contact my fiancé because she has no contact with me and no way to contact me. My fiancé, after reading this, said, "Oh my God, I always thought you were exaggerating about Christina, but she seems unstable." I said, "This is the reason I chose to move away, because I was afraid of her." I said, "You should have seen the 2,000-word text message she sent me. This is tame compared to that, or the message she sent me the day my uncle died." She talks about lack of boundaries, and it was an invasion of privacy. What was all that she did the day I moved out? She brought her entire family over to the house while my stuff was still there and went in and started moving my stuff and throwing it into a pile like it was trash. She turned off my security cameras so I couldn't catch her going through all my stuff that was in the house. I guess that wasn't an invasion of privacy. Then she talks about keeping food on their table and gas in their cars as a priority. She has quit any job she's ever had, even the jobs I helped her get. She's currently unemployed, yet my brother sold one of his big trucks so that he could buy her a Yukon Denali to drive around. This woman drives an $80,000 car and lives rent-free in my grandparents' house and doesn't work. She sends their child to daycare every day, even though she doesn't work, and they never eat a meal at their own home. My mother said they come out to her house every night and still eat her food. Anyways, it was kind of funny that my brother has not communicated with me in months. He never calls or texts me, and a couple months ago, I got a text message from him wanting me to buy stuff from Christina's multi-level marketing job. Apparently, she had quit her job to sell things for an MLM. My brother kept bothering me with multiple text messages wanting me to sign up for a membership with the MLM. This will come into play later, and I'll explain why this is relevant. So she also goes in to try and make my fiancé think that I'm a dirty person, that the house was a hot mess, quote unquote, when the kids and I lived there, even though I did the best to clean that place up, fix it up on a budget, even put a new roof on the house. Like narcissists do, she's basically projecting everything that she does onto me and was trying to make me look bad in my partner's eyes. I told my mother about this text message, and she was very upset because she said, "It's my house and my land. It's not theirs. They don't own anything except their cars." She said it was perfectly fine that we went to see the chickens, and that if she had known they were going to pull up the bushes that her father planted, she would have told them no. When I lived there, there was this huge tree that was always dropping limbs on the house and the yard, and I approached my mother about paying someone to cut it down. She said no, because that tree had been planted in memory of her father the year he died. I respected that and knew that I didn't own the home. I was just living there with her permission. But like I said, I got over the shock of seeing all the landscaping gone from the house. It wasn't something I wanted to spend energy on thinking about, especially since it was Mother's Day weekend and I was spending time with my fiance and my parents. I'd put it out of my mind. I had forgotten about it. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. Even though my fiance blocked Christina and didn't respond to her and ignored her, I got a text message from my brother a couple days later. He wanted to speak with me and said it would only take 5 minutes. Now, he works in the same city where I live, and sometimes I see his work truck. I told him over text message that I was getting ready for work. He answered me and said, "It'll only take 5 minutes. Can I come over?" Now, my brother has never been to my new house. I was getting ready for work, and when I wake up in the afternoons, I wake up at the last possible second that it takes to get ready for work because I work night shift. And sometimes, even after sleeping all day, I still feel like I haven't slept. I answered him and said, "No, I don't have time today. I'm getting ready for work." He asked, "What time do you leave for work?" I said, "I leave at 5:20 and it takes me over an hour to get to work sometimes depending on traffic." He said, "It will only take 5 minutes." I then answered him and said, "Dude, I am literally standing in my bathroom naked and drying my hair. I do not have time to talk today." So then he asked, "What day are you off of work this week?" So I told him I had to work 3 days in a row, but I would be off on Wednesday. Now, on my days off, I get off at 7 a.m., and of course I have an hour-long drive to get home. Then once I get home, I have to decompress from work, get breakfast, start laundry, and other things before I can finally lay down and go to sleep. So on my day off, he texted me in the middle of the day when I'm sleeping and asked if I was off work. I briefly saw this message but fell back asleep because I'm tired. 12-hour straight shifts really take it out of you, especially when it's night shift. I got woke up at 4 p.m. by my son saying, "Uncle Daniel's downstairs." So I get up, I put some pajamas on and my glasses because I didn't want to take the time to put my contacts in, and stumbled down the stairs half asleep. So my brother made small talk, saying, "This is a nice house. Never been here. How long y'all lived here? Is this the kitchen? I guess this is the living room." I wanted to say, well, duh, it's obviously the kitchen. I don't keep the stove and fridge in my bedroom. After some small talk, he got down to business and said, "Have you had a chance to look at my sales proposal? We're running a special this month on memberships, and they're only $1 for the year, and you can cancel any time. If you're not interested, then that's okay. I mean, no hard feelings." I looked at him like he had just grown a second head. Was this the reason my brother chose to wake me up and come over to my house while I'm sleeping after night shift, and he's never been to my house? Of course, that wasn't why he was there. He went into his speech saying, "I know you and Christina had a rough start a few years ago, and things have been said, but things were said about the house and the landscaping on my Ring camera, and we were both very upset. Why did y'all think it was okay to come walk around our house while we weren't there?" I looked at my brother and I said, "That's why you're here?" That was over a week ago, and we were looking at the chickens. Mom said it was okay, and she was with us the whole time. We were collecting eggs. He then said, "You don't know what it was like when we moved in. Everything in the flower beds was dead. All those rose bushes were dead, and I had to use a tractor to pull them out." I said, "You moved to the house in January. You moved in the middle of winter. Rose bushes die off and look dead in the winter. They grow back in the spring." He looked at me like he was trying to solve a math problem. I went on to say that you also pulled out all the azalea bushes that our grandfather planted, and I know they were not dead. He said, "Well, If I knew you wanted them, I would have brought them to you. I said, how the hell are you going to pull up an azalea bush the size of a car and then dig a hole big enough to put it in my yard? I then told him about the 6-paragraph message Christina had sent to my fiancé. He said he knew all about it. I said, you know, she is the reason I moved here and spent $60,000 of my retirement money to get away. She sent me a 2,000-word text message, and I was honestly afraid of her after that. Did you know about that message? See, all this time I thought my brother didn't know about that 2,000-word text message. He answered, I knew all about that text message. I asked him, did you read it? He didn't respond, and I said, normal people do not send 2,000-word text messages challenging their sister-in-law to a fight. The whole text message sounded like an unstable and dangerous person. At this point, he said, she ain't going to hurt you. I said, it's not normal, and I don't want to be around her, and I don't want my kids around her. He then responded again that she's not dangerous. He would never acknowledge whether he knew the content of the text message. He said at that point, well, from now on, all communication will come through me. I said, I don't want any communication with her. That's the reason I blocked her on social media, email, and my phone. I don't want to communicate with her, and I don't want to be around her. He then answered me and said, she's not dangerous. I said, she challenged me to a fist fight and then accused me of assaulting her with my words. My brother said he knew about the text message, and I said, well, she said at the end of the text message that you knew everything in that message and agreed with it. She said some pretty nasty things about me and the kids. Do you agree with every nasty thing she said? He tried to change the subject at that point and asked about my youngest son if he was graduating high school this year. I said no, but he would know what grade my son is in if he was involved in his life. My brother had been involved in the kids' lives when we first moved into the farmhouse next to my parents about 10 years ago. He would take them riding on the four-wheeler and come to all their school events, but after he met Christina, he changed. My brother used to be a very liberal person, given where we grew up. After he met Christina, he changed churches and started going to the Bible-thumping country church down the road. He started acting like he was the children's father and tried to discipline them. My kids have told me on several occasions they miss the uncle they had before Christina came into his life. I told my brother again, don't you realize that she's the reason I don't spend Christmas and Thanksgiving with our family? I'm not invited to family events because she will be there. He repeated himself that she's not dangerous to me or your kids. I finally ended the conversation and said, I will not visit our parents again, especially if I know you and Christina are going to be home. I don't want any contact with her. I will always love you, and you will always be my brother. If you never ever need anything, all you have to do is ask. But do not communicate any messages from her to me. I don't want her in my life or my children's lives. He acknowledged this and left. He said, well, I'll let you get back to what you were doing before I got here. Well, what I was doing was sleeping after a long 3 nights at work. I thought it was the end of it, but I was wrong. After all this, and what my brother and I said to each other, I got a text message from my brother a few days later. In the text message, he said, just following up with you about the opportunity we spoke about. They have great options for protein shakes, powder, and peak performance vitamins and other dietary things. They do have a promotional membership of $1 for 1 year, which is great. If you like, I can send you an enrollment link if you'd like to sign up and try it for a month. You're not locked into anything, and so if it's not a good fit, you can cancel at any time. Oh my God. On what planet and in what universe would my brother think after all this drama I would want to buy anything from his wife's multi-level marketing business? I'm not invited to family functions. I never see my adoptive niece. I barely see my parents, and the only time he wants to contact me is to sell me some overpriced MLM products. So, that's the latest drama. I can't make this stuff up. Narcissists are ridiculous, and they work on drama 24/7. Thanks, and take care.